Next, on Currents News, remembering a 10-year-old boy gunned down in Queens.
A memorial for the young boy growing on what would have been his 11th birthday as police continue to search for the suspect who shot him. I'm Emily Druby. That's ahead.
Plus, hacking attacks are plaguing U.S. companies, but what's being done about it? Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio is calling on the faithful to return to Mass.
If we ever needed to come to the Eucharist, now is the time.
Why he says we need church more than ever. Plus, a New Orleans priest celebrates his ordination the only way he knows how. By dancing in the street while a band plays some Big Easy jazz. The news starts right now. A growing memorial outside the Queens home where a 10-year-old's life was cut short. Today would have been Justin Wallace's 11th birthday. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. But instead of planning a party, Wallace's family is planning his funeral. The little boy who loved cars and music is one of the latest victims of gun violence in New York City. Currents News' Emily Druby is at the scene where neighbors worry neither Far Rockaway nor this city is safe for their children.
Christine, families are terrified. Neighbors today telling me how afraid they are every time their child walks out the door. Remember, Justin Wallace was an unintended target. He was shot over an argument about a parking spot. Police are still on the hunt for that suspect as shootings around the city continue to surge. Happy birthday balloons blow in the wind on the stoop, a cupcake. Instead of a birthday party, there's a memorial for Justin Wallace. He didn't make it to 11. People like Wanda McNeil stopping by to pay their respects to the young boy and to send a message of solidarity to his family.
People are supporting them. People are thinking about them. People are outraged. I mean, we are outraged.
Anger, a popular feeling among neighbors like LaToya Dixon.
I just don't understand why no one in this community has turned this man in. 10 years old.
Justin was shot and killed on Saturday, an unintended target while near the doorway of his aunt's home. His 29-year-old cousin was shot too and is recovering. In video released by the NYPD, you can see the suspect fire several rounds directly at the house from the sidewalk. Police are still searching for him.
And I pray to God that this person is found, and I pray to God that some elected officials do something around here, something more.
Little Justin is just one of the latest and one of the youngest victims of recent gun violence in New York City. Shootings up over 68% this year. So far, 602 incidents have led to 687 people either injured or killed. Mayor Bill de Blasio calling for federal and state help, but hasn't given a solid solution to the bloodshed.
It has to stop. It's going to take so many efforts, so much work, but it has to stop. Because this is not a way for us to live.
Back in Far Rockaway, Justin's school community is mourning his senseless death.
He loved math. Whenever he was asked to do something, his favorite word was, "I got you." He was a tech wizard, so he was one that we often called on for any technical needs.
Challenge Prep Principal Nicole Griffin tells us the school is offering counseling for students, some coming from Catholic charities. One of their clinical directors explains why it's important in a situation like this.
It's important to provide that type of service for kids because this is obviously something that is unforeseen, very sudden, can be very traumatic to them.
The school plans to hold a small memorial for Justin during their upcoming graduation, while the community is planning a walk slated for Wednesday. In Far Rockaway, Emily Druby, Currents News.
A Queens man is in custody for spray painting swastikas on several properties. The Queens District Attorney says Christopher Bahamonde is charged with criminal mischief as a hate crime, aggravated assault, and making graffiti. Bahamonde is accused of painting the symbols of hate and other graffiti at 3 different sites throughout Elmhurst. But no word yet if there's a connection to the vandalism at a Veterans Memorial in Elmhurst. Racist and anti-Semitic graffiti was spray painted on the Queens Vietnam Veterans Memorial. A $1,000 reward is being offered for information. And if you have any information, call Crime Stoppers at 800-577-TIPS. That's 800-577-8477. Later on in this broadcast, mayoral candidate Bill Pepitone will join us. He believes police have not been able to do their jobs recently, resulting in increased violence. Hear his plan for a safer city. Testifying before a panel of lawmakers, the CEO of Colonial Pipeline apologized for the cyber attack that paralyzed a majority of the nation's fuel supply last month. Joseph Blount's testimony before the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee marks his first appearance before Congress since his company paid a ransom worth roughly $4.4 million. However, in his opening remarks, the CEO reaffirmed his decision to pay the ransom.
It was the hardest decision I've made in my 39 years in the energy industry, and I know how critical our pipeline is to the country, and I put the interests of the country first.
A second hearing is set for Wednesday before the House Homeland Security Committee. Meanwhile, on Monday, the Department of Justice recovered a portion of the ransom Colonial Pipeline paid in Bitcoin to the Russia-based hacking group known as DarkSide. The Justice Department's recently created Digital Extortion Task Force worked with the company to get back just about half of the money. The cyber attack is just one of many so far this year. So what's being done about it? Officials say preventing attacks comes down to confronting the problem from all angles. Food, water, hospitals, education, transportation, gas. Ransom demanding cyber hackers have been targeting the staples of American life.
It's happening all the time, even as we speak. There are thousands of attacks, and this is why the private sector and the public sector have to work together.
On the private side, the White House sent a letter to business leaders urging them to take ransomware crime seriously and ensure your corporate cyber defenses match the threat. But it won't be easy. There's the cost, not to mention the need for company-wide coordination. Experts say the ransomware attack on the Colonial Pipeline began with a compromised password. On the public side, a push stateside and abroad. President Joe Biden signed an executive order last month requiring new software standards for the federal government, establishing a protocol for agencies and companies to share information with the government after a hack, and creating a new panel to review cybersecurity incidents. Cybersecurity will also be on the agenda when Biden heads to the UK at the end of this week for the G7 summit, and again next week when he meets with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Many of the attacks appear to be the work of criminal gangs on Russian soil. Clearly, there's no silver bullet here, and experts worry time isn't on our side.
Before long, we are worried that some people will get hurt.
National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says one of the things they'd like to see come out of the G7 summit is ideas on how to deal with the cryptocurrency challenge, which he says lies at the core of how these ransom transactions are played out. Major websites and apps are back up after going dark early Tuesday. The problem appears to be related to an outage at Fastly, a cloud service provider. It supports sites like the New York Times, Twitch, Pinterest, HBO Max, Reddit, Spotify, and others. Fastly says it identified the problem and fixed the issue. The outage affected dozens of countries across the globe. A new Senate report shows there were security breakdowns ahead of the January 6th attack on the Capitol. The bipartisan report finds Trump supporters had posted several violent threats online in the days and weeks leading up to the attack. The report also says intelligence officials struggled with how to differentiate between real threats and protected political speech. It also found information was not widely shared with police outside the Capitol. The committee didn't examine former President Trump's potential role in inciting the riot. Vice President Kamala Harris making the second stop in her first official journey abroad, this time Mexico. There, Harris met with the country's president to discuss the root causes of migration in Central America. As a result, the U.S. will join Mexico in a new partnership to create economic opportunities. The two leaders also agreed to increase security at the border. This follows the vice president's visit to Guatemala Monday, where she issued a blunt and clear message to migrants looking to make the dangerous journey to the U.S. border: do not come. The Biden administration is working to reunite migrant families who were separated at the border under the former administration's zero tolerance policy. So far, the White House has identified more than 3,900 families that were separated between July of 2017 and January of this year. They say over 1,700 children are back with their parents, but the status of the other families remains unclear. Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio just released a new pastoral letter calling on the faithful to come back to Mass. Now that the Sunday obligation is back, he's highlighting the importance of the Eucharist. Currents News' Jessica Easthope spoke with the bishop and has more on his message.
For many Catholics, it's been more than a year since they've been in church, and more than a year since they received the Eucharist. Now the Bishop of Brooklyn says it's time to come back.
The Eucharist heals. It's a remedy for all of the ills that we have because we're close to the Lord himself.
The importance of receiving the Eucharist is the subject of a new pastoral letter just issued by Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio. Now that restrictions are being lifted throughout Brooklyn and Queens, he believes it's important to get back into the pews.
Reminding people of the centrality of the Eucharist, how important it is, and what we really believe about it.
In his letter, Bishop DiMarzio cites a Pew Research survey that showed only 31% of Catholics believe the bread and wine actually become the body and blood of Jesus Christ. And it showed that belief is most common among older Catholics.
Back in my generation, we memorized every question. They didn't get that clear understanding of our faith that was in prior generations, so it kind of watered itself down.
Bishop DiMarzio believes the live streaming of masses has been a great tool during the pandemic, but can't serve as a replacement for receiving the Eucharist, and that it's the job of priests to make Mass enjoyable.
It has to be something attractive. It's an obligation, yes, but it shouldn't be onerous. It should be something that makes us happy.
Though many COVID-19 limitations are dwindling, Bishop DiMarzio says the pain of the health crisis is still there, but the Eucharist can help us move past it.
The relief can come through the Eucharist. It will help us see that somehow there's good coming out of even this terrible pandemic.
Now that churches in the Diocese of Brooklyn are at full capacity, the Sunday obligation is back in effect. Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
To read the bishop's letter in its entirety, pick up the latest edition of The Tablet at your church or read it online at thetablet.org. There's a lot more news headed your way. How one Catholic school is standing up to hate as crimes against Asian Americans skyrocket. Plus, mayoral candidate Bill Pepitone wants to reinvigorate the police department to make New York City safer if elected. His message to voters. And the family of a missing World War II soldier receives a little bit of closure as they learn more about him. All that and much more after the break.
There are now some big changes to the Tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
Hate crimes against Asian Americans are skyrocketing in New York City. So St. Michael's in Flushing is teaching its students about Asian languages, history, and culture, spreading positive information to combat the hate. Jessica Easthope visited the school and got a firsthand look at their program.
Seeing the world through Teresa Shoy's eyes. At 11 years old, it consists of family, school, church, and friends. But she's not blind to the hate that's directed at people who look like her.
With all this craziness going on, some people starts to relate this pandemic towards Asians, creating Asian hate.
At Teresa's school, St. Michael's Catholic Academy in Flushing, she gets to be totally herself, proudly Chinese and Catholic.
I can learn both about my religion and study deeper about it, while still having my Chinese roots and keeping a part of it as well.
The school is 70% Asian, but regardless of ethnicity, students have just as many classes in Mandarin as they do in English. They learn Asian history and culture. It's a safe haven from the bigotry sometimes found on New York City streets.
So many of the children come to school with their grandparents. And, are they going to be targeted? What are they learning? We're teaching peace here. We're teaching acceptance. And what they see outside, it contradicts what we're about.
Sister Mary Ruan, the coordinator for Chinese outreach at the school, says she's never experienced religious freedom before coming to the United States. And this recent rash of hate crimes brings her back to the days when she felt she needed to hide who she was.
In Fujian, it's very difficult. currently very difficult.
But when new families enroll at the school, Sister Mary makes them feel at home.
I always introduce myself. If they see I speak Chinese, they feel comfortable.
At St. Michael's, education is the response. It's hoping to grow a community where Asian culture, language, and values are celebrated, not hated. In Flushing, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
According to the NYPD, hate crimes against Asians increased by 335% compared to this time last year. So far this year, there have been 87 reports of anti-Asian cases, and last year there were 20. We're exactly 2 weeks away from the New York City mayoral primary, but our next guest doesn't have to worry about that since he's the only one on the conservative ticket. Joining us now is conservative candidate for New York City Mayor Bill Pepitone. And Bill, you say your number one concern is public safety. Earlier in the newscast, Emily Drewby reported on the shooting death of 10-year-old Justin Wallace. Shootings are up, so is crime in the subways and anti-Asian hate crime. So what's your plan to put an end to all of it?
Well, it's very simple. We go back to what worked in the mid-90s when we transformed the city from one of the most dangerous cities in the world to one of the safest. We go back to proactive policing. We repeal all of the anti-law enforcement legislation the city council and the mayor put in place. We allow the police to do their jobs. We know they can do it. They've done it in the past. If we allow the police to do their jobs, they can clean up the city very, very quickly. We can take guns off the street by being proactive. It's about proactive policing, quality of life policing, getting dangerous firearms and dangerous people off our streets. It's worked in the past. It will work again.
As a former police officer, I know you're against defunding the police, but there are so many people here in the city who are for it. How will you connect with them and build the NYPD's relationship with the people that they serve?
Well, I don't believe there are that many people who actually believe in it. I mean, a lot of it is coming from our politicians and our elected officials. The people I'm meeting on the streets in every community, in every neighborhood, they want the police. They want to see more police. They want police protection. They want visibility. So the side that wants to defund the police isn't so much the people, it's the politicians. So we have to replace them and put in real leaders.
Okay, you're a conservative running in a heavily Democratic city, and you're not as well known as the Republican candidates who are running. So realistically, what do you think your chances are? And how are you different from all of the other candidates?
Well, I'm very different because I'm not a career politician. I'm a New Yorker. I'm someone who served the city for 20 years, comes from a family of New York City servants and civil service and police officers and firefighters. That makes me different. I'm not somebody who sat in an office all day and dictated to people. I was out there helping people and helping save lives with the NYPD. As far as the overwhelming numbers towards Democrats, we've spoken to so many Democrats and people in the city who are tired. They're tired of politics as usual. They're not going to vote party lines anymore. They want the best candidate. They want a real leader, and our message has been strong since day one.
All right, let's talk about education. You've said that New York City's public schools are failing. So how will you fix them?
We go back to real academics, real learning, a legitimate and fair grading system where it's about, again, social growth, academic growth, children just growing in the system both academically and socially. It's not about radical social agendas, and that's what this administration has been about. They have tried to push their radical social agenda down the throats of our children and our parents, and it needs to stop.
All right, last question on the economy. Businesses are starting to open up again, but some restaurants are having a hard time hiring. They have no candidates, but unemployment is still high. So how do you plan to get people back to work?
We have to open up fully open up the city, do it safely. We have to change the culture. We have to start to get people thinking about going back to work and starting assimilating back into the workforce. And it starts in the high schools. It really does. We have to change the culture, start teaching more vocations and more trades. So when people leave high school, they're ready to go out into the workforce. Not everybody's built for college. Not everybody wants to go to college. We need to change the thinking.
All right, Bill Pepitone, conservative candidate for New York City Mayor. We'll be watching your candidacy as you continue through November. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
With the USCCB's virtual spring assembly set for next week, U.S. bishops are preparing to debate the issue of denying Holy Communion to pro-choice politicians. Following the election of President Joe Biden, the chair of the Doctrine Committee proposed a document to define who is and who isn't allowed to receive communion. Approval for the motion requires a 2/3 majority vote and approval from the Holy See. However, 67 bishops requested to delay the discussion until everyone could meet in person. Again, the USCCB Spring Assembly is scheduled for next week, starting on June 16th and ending on the 18th. National correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, John Lavenberg, will be following along and will have full reports on both Currents News and the Tablet. Still to come on Currents News, we've all heard of goat cheese and goat yoga, but goats as a gift? Yep, Pope got them. We'll tell you why. Plus, a New Orleans priest celebrates his ordination Big Easy style. We'll show you. The family of a missing World War II soldier has new reason to hope his remains may one day be discovered. In 1944, a Minnesota man went missing in Italy after he and his fellow soldiers came under attack. There was no evidence of what happened to him until now. John Lauritsen reports on a chance discovery overseas.
Though their time together was short, Burton Horsch remembers his Uncle Harlan is kind, caring, and hardworking.
He was a farm boy. Yeah. He helped my folks. He helped my folks a lot.
But like so many young men, during World War II, Harlan found himself far away from farm life and fighting for his country overseas. In May of 1944, his patrol came under attack by German soldiers near Itri, Italy.
They went out on patrol, and he was the first man out. And when they all came back, he never came back.
Well, the first thing that happened is we was getting mail returned. We got mail returned before we got the official notice that he was missing. Letters started coming back.
The family even received a letter from one of his squad mates saying they searched for days with no luck. But they never gave up hope, and nearly 8 decades after Harlan disappeared, they finally caught a break. In April, a man in Italy made a discovery on his family's farm.
He was just walking one day and saw something and picked it up, and it was the dog tag.
The man did an internet search and found a local newspaper article about Harlan's grave marker. That's how he knew where to send the dog tag. It was wind, rain, or fate itself that allowed this discovery. Harlan's family is praying that it's the beginning of closure.
That was John Lauritsen reporting. If Harlan's remains are eventually found, his family would like them to be returned to the States and buried at his family's cemetery plot. Turning now to the Vatican, where the Holy Father got an unusual gift. At a meeting with the president of Austria, the Pope was surprised with a gift of 20 goats. Though the president only brought photos of them to the Vatican, the goats will be given to families in Burundi through the charity Caritas. And finally tonight, just like the Diocese of Brooklyn, the Archdiocese of New Orleans welcomed men into the priesthood this past weekend. It was a joyous occasion that made one of the 6 new spiritual fathers dance with the Holy Spirit. That's Father Ajani Gibson right after his first Mass as a priest at St. Peter Claver Church. The church is not only his home parish. Father Gibson will start his first assignment there in July, working with the parish's administrator, Auxiliary Bishop Fernand Sherry. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.